Welcome to the Style Sports Hub, presented by UF Health Medical Group Orthopaedics.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Sports Hub podcast presented by UF Health Medical Group Orthopaedics. I'm your host, Kyle Coppola. Today, we are talking with former NBA player and coach of the Beacon College Blazers, Pat Burke. Thanks for coming on to the program, Pat.
Kyle, thank you for having me.
Yeah, Coach, really exciting things you got going on at Beacon College. And really the last couple of years, seeing Beacon College's athletics continue to grow and thrive. It's been fun to watch. And now you, of course, coming on for Sam Vincent, who has moved on to other things, but he built a great program there at Beacon, and now you're going to come on board. What was the process like kind of coming to Beacon, and how did you end up in Leesburg?
Well, it starts about 10 years ago. So 10 years ago, I met Dr. George Haggerty, and he introduced his vision of athletics. At the time, there was no athletics at Beacon College, and sitting with him in his office, and if you know Dr. Haggerty, you know he's visionary. So, I started to think to myself, that's interesting. And then here it comes, we'll get into 2025, and I was doing some of the Beacon College basketball live stream broadcasting. And so as I was, taking care of the games and communicating, what was going on, one of my friends who, 10 years ago, around the same time of that conversation with Dr. Haggerty, we had partnered on a project here at Beacon, and he came up to me during the game and he said, hey, what are you doing now? And, I talked to him about, kind of the struggle of looking for something in the, the recreational athletic side of things, in and around Lake County. And I just said, I'm looking to get my foot in the door. And he said, what type of position? And I said, any position. And so that's when he hired me in as the Beacon College community educator, which really is a street coach. And from that point, I think it was 3 weeks. Dr. Haggerty said it was the fastest or shortest term tenure of a community educator that they approached me about the position as athletic director and men's basketball coach, because Sam Vincent had built this program to a certain space, and then he was moving on to another venture in his career as well.
Mm-hmm. And you come in with so much experience. Of course, you played in the NBA, you played in the Euro League, which it's exciting to have a guy with your kind of background that Beacon's going to be able to pick your brain, and you know a lot of things. So what has it been like to come on to Beacon College and sort of deal with the student body too? Because it's a very unique place as well, because it's one of only 2 colleges in the United States that focus specifically on neurodiverse students, which is amazing in itself. But what has that been like coming on board with that?
Well, first of all, the experience that I take is one, I think, of distinction, and it's like saying when like the light is on and the light is off. Mm-hmm. And a lot of the coaches that I've had, their leadership styles, I've had the opportunity to look back and say, how effective was that approach? Some of my coaches in Europe were screamers. They were autocratic. They were just telling you what to do, and their motivation was an influence of fear. And some of the coaches that I had in the NBA and even in college were more relationship side of building. And I think those are ones of growth. And so that distinction then had me coming into this opportunity and saying, the neurodiverse community has a number of things. Of course, when you think and your brain is unique in the way that you take things in and how you're going to actually produce. I had to look at this and I said, okay, what can I take from that experience and use inside of this? And I think a lot of it is asking thought-provoking questions, asking the individuals, what do they think about that? And, I don't think that's something normally seen inside of, again, youth sports, but in sports as well. So I think that was probably one of the biggest things that I was able to take away from, applying something that I learned from my professional career and then using it here.
Yeah, and you're going to be set to continue to build the Blazer program. They're renovating the gym that they play in currently, and they got a lot of great things going on. For you personally, you're the first ever born player from Ireland, which is really cool to play in the NBA, which is amazing in its own. So, how did you end up getting into the sport of basketball? Like, how did that end up? Like,
I wish I could say it was all me, but a collaboration. I think that the first I was born in Ireland, moved to America when I was 4. I still remember the idea of growing up Irish it's in the menu, it's in the culture. We go into Irish dances all the time. And then my aunt asked me at the kitchen table one time, say, hey, do you want to play ice hockey? And I, looked over at my aunt and looked over at my mom and dad, like, what's going on? And my mom, in her sweet Irish voice, she's like, what do you mean? And so anyways, I joined ice hockey and played for about 8 years. And I had a passion for it, loved sports, loved the idea of competition. And then that's when the good Lord put a huge growth spurt in my life. So I grew 7 inches in one summer.
Wow.
And I started high school at the end of that summer. So I walked in at 6'5", and it's funny, but the world started telling me, at one moment was like, life was going to be different from this point at that height. And they were like, hey, you should play basketball. You should play basketball. And so I didn't. I decided, I don't want to do this. I think fear or not fitting in is probably the biggest fear that kids have growing up. So I was like, I don't want to go out there and look awkward. So the following year, I grew another 2 inches, and my sophomore year, doubled the number of people were telling me to go play, so I decided to play. And I did, and when I went out, I was probably the most ineffective basketball player. If you put a pair of ice skates on me, I would have been great. But this was a new space for me, learning all the rules, learning all the technical and tactical aspects of it. And it wasn't actually that first coach that helped me to improve the most. It was actually my next coach, and that was a coach that I met down in Cape Coral, Florida, named Marty Waters. And so Marty had an approach of asking thought-provoking questions, asking a lot of ideas of what do you want to do with this game. And I think that was the thing that started that trajectory of getting a college scholarship, going off to play 12 years of professional basketball. So I look back at that moment with Marty Waters and think to myself, that was a big part of someone mentoring me and taking me under their wing.
Yeah, you end up going from Ohio, and then you ended up playing high school basketball down here in Florida. How did you end up in Florida?
So I'm the youngest of 6, and the 4 oldest kids had moved out of the house, gone off to college. And I remember my dad was coming in, from a hard day's work in a Cleveland winter, and I just got to the table, and he looked at myself, my next older brother, Niall, and my mom, and just said, hey, what do y'all think about moving to Florida? And at that time, I was like, this sounds wonderful. Like, I can pack my bags right now. Yeah. And we moved down halfway through that school year, my sophomore year, and that's when I transitioned from that one coach up in Cleveland, Ohio, down to Marty Waters' program at Mariner High School.
When did you feel like you were starting to excel at basketball? Like, what time in high school were you like, okay, I think I can go and at least get a scholarship? And then you end up at Auburn as well. So when did you really feel like this is the sport that I want to play?
I knew it was a sport I wanted to play, but I always had a doubt. When you're starting something for the first time and you feel like everybody's ahead of you, you're always hungry to play more. And the funny thing is most of the kids, like anybody, they probably had a lot of bad habits, but I didn't see them. I was just looking at kids that had been playing since they were 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So I was always fearing, what do I not know that they know? And so just practicing in the driveway all the time. I believe probably the moment that I felt like it was starting to change was when there was a little bit of notoriety, some of the media publications started coming to the games, whether it was newspapers or, the news cameras, and they were just talking about the stats. And then all of a sudden, there was college coaches coming to the game. And so I was like, this is really happening. But again, there was always that doubt that, you haven't achieved what everybody else is doing.
Yeah, it reminds me a little bit of Taco Fall, who was a UCF player and ended up playing for the Boston Celtics. He was a big guy too, a little unrefined, but was able to make a career out of himself. And he might have started basketball a little later than other guys, but made it happen. So that was really cool. So you end up at Auburn. How did that all end up? How did you end up getting scholarship offers? Because you obviously a big guy. They don't make 7-footers every single day. 6'11", I believe, listed. But you look 7 feet to me. It's just amazing to have known you to go from high school and then you get the opportunity at college. How did that end up?
So the timing of this question is very interesting, because about a week ago, after I got the position at Beacon, a gentleman named Greg Haddix, named Coach Haddix, he was the gentleman who was recruiting me for Auburn. So I start out at this new school. By my junior year, they're starting to come look, and by my senior year, Auburn starts to come in, and Coach Haddix at the time with compliance and recruiting timing. He was just like popping out of the hedges or behind a locker room, and he would just sit there and he'd go, "Hey, Pat, War Eagle, Auburn," and I'd be like, what's going on? And next thing you know, Coach Haddix kept coming up to me and talked to me, and then he introduced me to Tommy Joe Eagles, who was the head coach at the time. And something spoke to me about after my visit there that, this is the place that I want to go. Not even knowing the level at which the SEC conference was, I was just like, this is where I want to go. And, we all know the understanding of having a big fish in a small pond move into a bigger pond. Then of course, it was another emotional setback. The adversity of, did I make the right decision? Because I was the only one that redshirted that year, and I came in and I wasn't strong enough. And a lot of the upperclassmen, they let me know right away. Because again, I think in the collegiate level, you're going to protect your program by letting people know if they're not working hard enough, or where do you see your fit? And right away they started letting me know that, and I didn't know how to respond to that. And I was in a great group of support with the strength trainer, the nutritionalist coach, all of these things where I started to change. But at first, again, it was another one of those moments like, have I done enough to receive this scholarship and to be here?
What was that like, seeing your body change and then kind of morphing into the player you did in college? Because you ended up as a fantastic collegiate athlete, but you didn't get there right away. But it brings me back to a lot of the athletes that start at JUCOs in the area, and maybe they end up at NCAA Division II, 3 schools before they end up at NCAA Division I programs, and then they're able to make that work. One of the players, I think, was for Leesburg High School recently. Keon Ellis comes to mind, and Keon started at a JUCO and works his way up. But it's interesting. What was your story?
Yeah, so when Keon was going through that journey, Keon used to work out at our space over at Hoops in Mount Dora, Tavares area. Mm-hmm. And I was watching from afar, but I could relate to what he was going through. And when the draft occurred, he didn't get picked. I sent him a message and I said, "Hey, look, I know that, you know your heart. I know your desire. I want you to know that I didn't get drafted, and it took me 5 years before I made the magic." Yeah. So it can happen. And to see him now in the space he's in, and everybody's like almost surprised, like, how did he not get to it? Because his intangibles of what he brings, it's not a 40-inch vertical, it's not shooting 50% from the three-point line. It's his mindset, his ability to understand team, to do the little things, and he's a great compliment, I think, for all of those programs that he went through, and he probably took a little piece of each one of them to get to where he's at now. So for mine, it's the same thing. As I think every little bit of something that occurred made me stronger. When I got to Auburn, the adversity had me question things. My freshman year redshirting, I sat there and I got to warm up with the team. I never got to play, so there's a lot of doubt. I then played for the Irish national team in their World University games, and it was an opportunity to go to a different environment and reinvent myself. Even though I wasn't up to the standard at the Auburn guys, when I got to the Irish national team, I remember I showed up and these guys were like, "You're amazing. Like, how are you doing this? And how are you jumping like this?" And I was like, "What are you talking about?" And after a while, I started playing with a new confidence. So the following year, my freshman year coming into play, first practice, I remember, guys like Wesley Person and Aaron Swinson, guys who were destined to play professionally, they were looking at me first practice and they were like, "You're not the same player." And that was one of those moments where here's where I want to succeed, but I needed a place to reinvent myself. Because again, not to get too deep, but I went through a hypnosis. My freshman year, the spells that they were telling me was, "You're not good enough. You're not going to be good enough." And I believed them after a while. And then when I went and started working with the Irish national team, a whole new spell came into my mind of like, "Hey, you are good enough. You're doing really good things." I started playing against the World University teams like Sharon Wright on the USA team, putting down dunks, and these guys were giving me respect. And I was going, wait a minute. So when I went back, I had started to believe something different. And when I came back, they recognized it right away. And they were like, you know what, this is a different team and you're going to be a big part of it.
Things have changed, of course, at the college level as well nowadays. If you're not getting playing time, you just enter the transfer portal and change. But I guess back when you were playing, and this was just a handful of years ago, of course, it was a little different. You didn't get guys transferring all the time. I mean, it happened, but you stuck it out at Auburn. Why did you stay?
I'd say it's a lot to do with my parents and my upbringing. You know, I know if when I was going through the recruiting process, I remember I went to one school, Winthrop. It was my first visit.
Yeah.
When my dad picked me up from the airport coming back, I was like, Dad, that's the one. And my dad's token line is whenever he doesn't believe, just stop. Stop. Just like that. And so I was like, what's the matter? He goes, that's the first one you went to. Now you're going to go to all of them. Now, when I was playing, the same thing is if I would have talked to my dad and said, hey, Dad, you know, we're going through a coaching change and I'm thinking about it, he'd be like, stop. And he would have thought to himself, like, you're not going to grow any differently in some other space. And the grass is not always greener. So lock in. And I did use that understanding to stay there and just to work as hard as I could. I wasn't, you know, some sort of specialty guy. I was just a hardworking person that after a while people started to realize, hey, you can count on this individual and he'll give you those consistent numbers. Yeah. And I think that, you know, not looking for an easy way out or building some excuse, not to say that it doesn't work for other individuals in today's world, but back then I don't think that would have been a fit for me.
So you end up not getting drafted, of course, in the NBA, but you end up going over and playing in the Euro League for a couple of years, kind of getting the experience, and then you transition to the Orlando Magic. How did that end up and transpire? Because you got a lot of experience playing in Spain and the whole Euro League over there. It's amazing what you were able to accomplish. I believe you won a championship with Real Madrid over there. How did the Orlando Magic deal come about?
So, yeah, didn't get drafted. My agent had spoke to me. I actually had worked out with the New York Knicks right after the draft. I went out to L.A., played in the L.A. Summer League with them. Van Gundy came up to me and shared, hey, Pat, I know that you have an opportunity to play in Europe and you have your passport and you're probably going to get a lucrative deal, but we'd like to offer you, for the first time ever, a non-drafted rookie. We're going to give you a guaranteed contract. So I'm sitting there going, oh my goodness, this is the dream. Like I'm going to be an NBA player. And then my agent hands me this contract for this team, Tau Ceramica in northern Spain in Vitoria. And so I'm looking at the two of them. And I'm like, this is beyond my ability. Like I can't understand like which one's going to be the best. Here's this idea of the quick fix, get into the NBA. And I ask kids that this at campus. I put them to a situation and 99% of the kids go to the Knicks. And then my agent at the time, Warren Legary, he had spoke to me and he said, Pat, you know, the big thing that people share about you is your potential is not reached. And I want you to realize if you go to the Knicks, you know, there's another Pat there. He's an Hall of Famer named Patrick Ewing, and he's going to get all the minutes. And you're probably not going to get a whole lot of time, and that'll be probably your one shot with the NBA. But if you go over to Spain, you know, you're going to get an opportunity to keep working, to keep putting in the skill sets, to keep, you know, working on things. And I was like, you know what? It's a very mature conversation. Yeah. I decided to go to Spain. And when I was, you know, finished with Spain, then I got a contract to go play for one of the largest teams in Europe, Panathinaikos in Greece. And I played over there in Greece for 4 years. So at the end of the 5 years, anybody who knew me in college and saw me play were like, this is two different people. Mm-hmm. And it was because, again, my first start of basketball was at 16. And when I walked in, there were no bad habits because there was no habits. Yeah. So even the coaches were like, wow, this is interesting. Like, you know, you don't hang your arm out. You're not, you know, doing bad habits with tactical things where you're not in rotation in the right place. I was learning everything fresh and new. So once I was picking them up, they were able to like, you know, okay, let's reinforce this. So I think, you know, going to Europe for those 5 years helped me develop. And then when I got to try out for the Magic, I'll never forget. I you know, sitting there and I go into the locker room. I put on a practice jersey. I walk out to the court, and then my jaw drops. I'm looking out. I'm like, oh, okay. There's Mike Miller. There's Grant Hill. There's Tracy McGrady. Wow. This isn't awkward. Wow. So I started playing with them, and I was fortunate that I lost my hair. I was about 23. So when I stepped out there, when I was in college, full head of hair. 23, shaved it off. So I don't know if I looked like some sort of foreign player that nobody recognized, or, maybe I wasn't on TV a lot, even at Auburn. But as soon as I came out there, Grant Hill approached me after like the first game, and he was like, "Hey, what's your name? Like, you're really good. You could really help us." And I was like, "Yeah, my name is Pat Burke. I went to Auburn." He goes, "You went to Auburn?" And I think that people had thought that I was like a European player just coming over for the first time. Mm-hmm. But I'll never forget, Grant Hill, Tracy McGrady, Mike Miller, Sean Kemp, Darrell Armstrong, all these guys really wrapped, their support around me and helped me to get to that point where, starting night, I was the starting center for the Magic.
That's amazing. Yeah. What was that like, especially for your parents, just looking out in the crowd and, seeing them? That must have been like a special coming home moment for you. I mean,
yeah, I remember after my parents came out from one of the games that I was starting, and they were announcing me like Pat Burke from Mount Dora, Florida. Yeah. After the game, my dad came up to me and he was like, I think you might be the first ever Irish-born NBA player. And it's not like we go around thinking that these type of things. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. I never thought about that. And then it became, this thing of understanding. It's like, wow, there is a historic space inside of that. Like nobody else from Ireland has ever done that. Yeah. So it was very special. And then, of course, all my, Irish relatives, my aunts and uncles and cousins, we all embraced that. We weren't, there was no social media at the time. So we weren't sitting there like going, hey, guess what? Hashtag first Irish. It was just something that we knew as an understanding, inside the family. And, I didn't even know was basketball that big a sport, or was it that popular to even share that with anybody in Ireland?
What was it like for the community in Ireland to learn about that? And I would say you've grown the sport over there as well, being the fact that you played in the NBA and you've given kids over there and just Irish-born people a reason to celebrate. Really,
I agree to a certain point. Like in the history of Irish basketball, the '80s was a very popular moment for the basketball league over there. Mm-hmm. Then it dipped a little bit in the 90s. Myself and a number of professionals came over and played for the Irish national team. Marty Conlon, James Moran. We all came out there. Coach Jay Larinaga, who's now one of the NBA coaches. So when we came out there, we had this opportunity to propel it again, to hit the trajectory of popularity for it. And I think we had gone further than any of the national teams had gone in the small nation side of things, looking to qualify for the Olympics. Yeah. Shortly after that, I left for the Phoenix Suns, and there still wasn't, this overwhelming like, hey, here's Pat Burke, our Irish. Our Irish representative, and again, is that, to be fair, was, I was born in Ireland, moved when I was 4. I was surrounded by, all my family. We grew up in Irish, but I didn't grow up in Ireland. So I hadn't come through the Irish pathway of, going to different clubs and playing and like that. So I don't think there was that connection there. When I did have the notoriety of some individuals communicating it over, the radio or that, it was very interesting because people hadn't noticed. They're like, oh my goodness, did you know that there's a gentleman who was born in Ireland, who's played in the NBA, who's won a EuroLeague championship. He's won he's run this, the Spanish Cup with Real Madrid. He's won the Greek Cup 3 times. He's won the Polish Cup. Like, no one's like, well, how are we not hearing about him? Well, there was no platform. There wasn't an ESPN that was just the Irish branch of saying, hey, here's a fact. Mm-hmm. But now, like on rare occasions, like St. Patrick's Day, if there's an NBA game, that could be one of the trivia questions. And so I still think the next person who comes through will be the individual I think that they'll connect with, and it'll be great.
How did so then you get to the end of your career, your professional career, and then you kind of transition to or trying to transition to other things. How did that end up at the end of your career? And I mean, it's brought you to this point. Yeah. But what was the end of your career and transitioning back to kind of?
So at 12 years, I'm playing in Poland. I can feel the trajectories now going, like you're getting towards the end of your career. I was losing butterflies before games. I was just going, okay, let me get my 10 rebounds, 10 points, and I'm good. The biggest thing, too, was my family at the time, my wife and my 3 kids were living in America, and I was overseas by myself. And I said, I think this is going to be the end. So once I was finished, I came over and I went back to my communications degree from Auburn. And I was like, let me go contact Auburn basketball and see if there's any opportunity there. So I started doing radio broadcasting for Auburn basketball. At the time, I thought I was loving that space, but I think, again, going back to the word distinction, is I hadn't had anything else. So when I was coming back and forth, going from Mount Dora, Florida, all the way up to Auburn, Alabama, somebody came up to me and said, hey, do you ever train kids? And I thought, I never even thought about that. I've 3 kids of my own. I never thought about training them. So somebody said to me, I'd love for my son to work with you. So I went into my backyard. I had a little half court in the backyard, and in about a month, it went from about 1 to 2 kids to about 20 kids. And that's when I realized, I like broadcasting. I love working with individuals and helping them. And so then I went in to speak to my wife, and I said, hey, look, I think I found something I love doing, and I'd like to make a small investment. I'm figuring some sort of business model of training. We find a storage space that's big enough to do it. And so we stepped in, and that was when we originally started the idea of Hoops.
Yeah, and that you brought that over, and that idea over to Ireland as well, which we'll talk about just a little bit on the Sports Hub. We'll have more with head coach Pat Burke in just a moment.
Is pain or restricted range of motion keeping you on the sidelines? Get back in the game with expert orthopedic care from UF Health Medical Group Orthopaedics. UF Health Medical Group Orthopaedics provides robotic-assisted surgical joint repairs and replacements, post-operative care, and inpatient rehabilitation services, all close to home, right here in Lake and Sumter counties. And for those unexpected injuries, UF Health Medical Group Orthopaedics offers convenient walk-in and same-day appointments. To learn more or to schedule an appointment with one of their specialists, call 352-323-5665.
Everybody, we are back here on the Sports Hub podcast talking with Beacon College's head coach, new head basketball coach, Pat Burke. I want to thank you for coming on to the program, Coach. And we were just talking about the programs that you were bringing to the area and what you brought over to Ireland, and kind of how you got into the coaching scene and ended up at Beacon. So the last couple of years, how did you end up in this position?
So I think after we opened up that facility, Hoops, I would say that first year without a business background was probably the most stress I've ever had in my life. Not understanding accounting or marketing, enrollment. I thought I knew basketball, but what I didn't understand is how humans learn. And this was a big space that caused me stress. Not just because I'm a competitive person and I want to help people to assist them and support them, but the word transformation has a very big meaning. Like when we spoke earlier, I said, I went over and started working out with the Irish national team, but the person that came back to college was a different person. So there was a transformation there. What I was experiencing in Hoops was I'd work with individuals, and I was basically telling them, hey, do this, do that, do that. And I was becoming the worst version of a coach, in my opinion, because a coach really wants to share with you what is you're looking to achieve. Make it more individualized, make it more personable, make it more about the relationship. And I had, in that amount of time, had put together a 12-year career, had gone to college, and I was walking through a righteous space of, I know what I know, instead of saying, what do I not know? And I didn't know anything about how humans learn and how to become an individual who could help with the transformation. So I decided to strip down the actual programs that we're using at HoopsLife at the time. After that first year, I worked with a group about leadership, looking at self-awareness, how I was doing things, and we created a program called HoopsLife. HoopsLife ran till about 2018, and that's when you mentioned we brought it over to Ireland. My former director, Niall Berry, he made a request. He loved this program so much, and he said, I'd love to bring this back to Turles in Ireland, where I'm from, and start this in an academy. And so again, as I said, be blessed with it. Take care of those kids and anybody that comes into the path of this program. And so very quickly it caught on because it was something new over there. The Irish academics and educational system, I think, it tries to stay on the forefront of innovative stuff, looking to speak ways of communicating leadership, not just putting a ball in a metal cylinder, but what we can do as a basketball being a vehicle for the information that they were giving. So within, I want to say a year, it was in about 5 different academies, and he started to do summer camps, and it was gaining a lot of momentum. Currently, it's still in 5 academies. Niall is still running around the country, communicating the HoopsLife approach, and I'm excited about what he's done with it.
What is the HoopsLife approach?
So the HoopsLife approach is one where, again, we talked about this earlier. That first coach that I had way back when I first started in Cleveland, Ohio, this was an individual who worked through autocratic space, just telling people like this. And we see this all the time. If a coach is sitting on a sideline and they're telling their kids, hey, I told you 1,000 times to box out, the individual is never understanding that the self-awareness is you've just said it 1,000 times without any opportunity to change it, but you're going to go 1,001 without ever going, maybe it's my approach is what's ineffective. And so the HoopsLife approach is about working with individuals, just like that coach or just like a player. Maybe they don't have enough self-awareness to realize they're not getting back on defense. Maybe they don't realize that they're not communicating with their teammates, or they're taking all the three-pointers. So the HoopsLife approach is a way in which we start dialogue and conversations, and some of them can be awkward. So let's say, Kyle, you and I are playing, and we're sitting at a timeout, and I say, hey, Kyle, how many shots do you think you got up that last timeout? And you go, I think, I don't know, about 2. And I said, okay, can someone tell me in the stat sheet? You go, it was 19. Do you know how many shots I took? And many times people will sit there and go, who? Is because the reality is most of us are so unself-aware of others that I don't want to call it selfish, but we're worried about our space. Sometimes you don't realize that we're not contributing to others. We're not taking the opportunity to stop and ask others how they're doing, or even building those conversations to get them motivated to come back into a team unified approach. And so the HoopsLife program was about that. It wasn't just about putting the ball in the metal cylinder. It's about how you're working with your team at home, how you're working with your team at school, how you're working with individuals in sports and play, because we're all the same person. Not to get too deep, we're all the same person we are at the grocery store, that we are out playing basketball, that we are at home. We don't just change into different people. So using that space, I think, really is what promoted the introduction to Dr. Haggerty. Dr. Haggerty over here at Beacon College then came and he had heard from one of our parents who had a child in our program, and then she came up to me and she said, I think this aligns with the mission and vision of Beacon College. Have you ever met Dr. Haggerty? I said, no. And so I came up here to Leesburg. I met with Dr. Haggerty. We put together the idea of working on a new project for the summer. And then at that time, I understood that there was a vision of athletics. So that's a long answer, but that's really how it all came together.
Are you going to take some of that and kind of bring that into the Beacon Blazer program? Because it's really exciting to know that that's what's going on. And then these kids with neurodiversity, to have a coach with that kind of mindset is fantastic.
I think, first of all, thank you. And I didn't have this before. So the ability to bring this in it's 100% coming with me, because I think that, again, is when sports are about building relationships and helping people achieve to be the best version of themselves, collectively, we can all set goals as well. And I think that is sometimes it's a new opportunity to talk about that or introduce that. And whether it's in the neurodiverse community or kids just out there just playing, a lot of them never have those conversations. I mean, I can share with you that first approach in this with Coach Marty Waters at Mariner High School, when he was asking me thought-provoking questions, my father wasn't doing that at my own house. So this was a new way in which somebody was asking me questions about how to grow. So it had me thinking differently. And every time we go through these type of conversations and I'm working with any individual, you can see them like going, are you asking me, wait a minute, what are you asking me? And it's probably something that they're not used to, those type of questions, or there's not a ritual space at their dinner table or in their classroom that they're having these conversations. Whereas once it becomes a normal space and that ritual at the end of a practice, we're all talking, everybody becomes very comfortable with the awkward. Like if you ask somebody, hey, did anybody notice respect in today's session? They go, oh yeah, Kyle was really respectful. He did. Did anybody notice disrespect? They go, oh yeah, I noticed that. Pat over here, he ate all the Gatorade. I drank all the Gatorade. And as soon as we can get to those things, it's not a place to point people out for good or bad. It's just a place to be more effective and gain more self-awareness. And it becomes a safe place to fail. Yeah. Where it's like, if we can't put these conversations on the forefront, there's going to be problems. Like, I don't care if I'm at Beacon College or I'm in my own living room at home. If we don't talk about things, then they're going to fester for months and months, and we could get to the conference finals or the USCA national championship, and by halftime we haven't put together some topic that we need to talk about. Next thing you know, there's an elephant in the room and we blow it in the second half.
Yeah. Well, what are you most looking forward to at the program and building? Because you have an extensive career. You have such a great mindset that you're bringing to the Beacon College program. But what are you most looking forward to?
Just enjoying every day.
Yeah.
I think that to cast a vision like what Dr. Haggerty shared with me all those years ago, to fulfill that vision, to me, would be the goal. To make sure that we're encompassing the Beacon College mission statement, that we're weaving in the student body and the student athletes at the same time, that individuals, when they're going into any sports event we have, that they're recognizing the individuals on the court, the individuals on the field, the individuals that are on the track, they're just like each one of us, and celebrating inside of that. And I think that that's bigger than any plastic trophy or championship, because the greatest moments that I can talk about at any of the teams, it wasn't about winning the EuroLeague. It was about the brotherhood and the camaraderie that we had as far as teammates together, and the moments in between practices where our families would go to dinner, and even today having conversations with those gentlemen. Yeah. So I think that what I'm looking forward to is as soon as this interview is over, I go back to campus and I start talking to individuals, and we start building a new culture, that's about building relationships and really finding out what individuals want to achieve.
Yeah, it's so exciting. I'm so happy for you. We're happy that you're here in Leesburg and what you're going to build with the program. So, Coach Pat Burke, thank you so much.
I appreciate it, Kyle. Thank you so much. And I want to say this to all the viewers, Beacon College, of course, is right here in Lake County. And what we're looking to do is to create a welcome, to create an invitation. Come to our sporting events. Come support and realize what's going on, because we're also going to start creating a number of athletic scholarships, and we're looking into Central Florida, and we want to start celebrating the best version of the students and individuals that may be on the neurodiverse community here in Central Florida as well.
Yeah, very exciting. So I can't wait to see what you guys build over there, and the continued upward trajectory that Beacon College continues to see. So thank you, Coach.
Thank you.
All right, that's going to wrap things up here on the Sports Hub. I want to thank our partners, UF Health Medical Group Orthopaedics. I'm your host, Kyle Coppola, and we'll see you on the next edition of the Sports Hub.
This has been the Style Sports Hub, presented by UF Health Medical Group Orthopaedics.